All right. Welcome to Carlos Samaniego's podcast and YouTube channel. And today is going to be an exciting day. I actually have a special guest coming on who has been a friend. Oh my gosh, I think almost 17, 18 years. I find it even hard to believe that. And this is a special guest because one of the things that, I tell my story on how I got involved in the tax industry, how I went years not filing my own taxes. I found my godfather. He's right above me, the actual godfather from the movie The Godfather, and Ernie, who is my godfather, who helped me solve my tax problems. And this next guy that I'm getting ready to introduce has a very similar story. And I wanted to show how he has progressed in his career and just talk. And this is like, we just decided to do this out of the blue. There's no script here. So my special guest is my good friend, Pete Kici. And I'm going to add him to the screen. Pete, what's happening?
Carlos, good afternoon, buddy.
Oh, man, Pete, I am excited to talk to you about everything. Wait, Liz, how long ago did that first Tucker event? Do you remember that first Tucker event? How many years ago?
Dude, it's before
2003. So we're talking almost 20 years, Pete.
I think we were doing this like early 2002, maybe 2021 years. That's when Tucker came on from the Dan Kennedy thing, and then we got going in his world, and we had that little something going from the non-conforming lending point of view, helping people that couldn't get out of their own way. And we subsidized the whole deal for us.
Until what that group was, for you guys that we're talking about Scott Tucker, me and Pete were both in the mortgage industry back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and a guy named Scott Tucker was a marketing genius that put together an event in Chicago, and we actually all went to this event in Chicago, and that's where we actually met. So Pete's building his mortgage business. I'm building my mortgage business here in California, and we're learning all these strategies. And Pete, I'm going to shock you right now by sharing my screen here. Take a look at that.
Hold on, buddy. I need glasses. The good-looking guy in the background. Who's that behind you?
There's Pete right there, and there I am. Liz, and there's my wife. My wife has me in this picture.
Listen, that was a crazy time, but you know what? It was all fun. And one day
it was fun. And Scott, if you're watching this, obviously here's Scott here, and our bunch of Lou up in Seattle. We have James here from the LA area. Mike Midget. He was also a mortgage marketing trainer, still in the mortgage industry. It's shocking. I take a look at this picture, Pete, and it just blows my mind.
Dude, we're the two best looking people in the whole picture. You and I, and your wife, obviously. She's got the center stage. It's good. Yeah, it's good times, man. I love the group. I love what it brought and the energy. And I tell you what, we made like a couple dollars while we were at it.
We were good. Check out this. This is a party bus at one of those events.
Yeah, remember that? Keith Troutman. That's Keith Troutman.
Keith Troutman right behind you. That's right. And the reason I'm bringing this up, guys, is that's where me and Pete initially met. And obviously the mortgage industry blew out back in 2008. So a lot of us went our separate ways. I think I lasted a few more years. I went my separate way. What happened to you after that, Pete?
Dude, what happened was I was the smartest guy I knew. So I had money. I was cranking it up with the mortgages, had an office, 6, 8, 10, 12 employees any given time. We're making some real money, 50, 60, 70,000 a month, And I was banking real well. And I thought, I'll just ride this out. I had rental properties. I had all kinds of stuff going on. I had 10, 12 homes. The market took a dive, and then rents followed. When the housing market started getting crushed, the people that were living in the properties I was renting were telling me they could get rent for this cheaper price down the street. And these were all really nice homes, and they were all mortgaged. And I thought, okay, so I had to cut rents in order to keep my tenants because you don't want a rental property empty for many reasons. So we were getting rents, but under market rents because nobody was able to get market rents because of the real estate crisis. So I decided instead of losing these properties, I'm going to go ahead and subsidize the rent with my own money. And I had hundreds of thousands of dollars in reserve, and I figured it would be a year or two that this stuff is going to be okay. And in the meantime, I was trying to do mortgages, and it just wasn't working. So for about 2 years, I burned through a lot of cash. And then about 2010, 2011, it was time to make hard decisions, and we weren't writing any loans. And for what it's worth, we're running out of money too. So we start cutting loose properties, doing what we're doing. And I started trying to go the Dan Kennedy way and do marketing for local businesses. And the worst thing about dealing with local businesses is these are people that don't want to spend money in marketing. They don't have the ability to follow direction, and they don't want to pay you once they get the marketing going. So it's like the worst customer you can get. And I did that, and it was like painful.
Gotcha.
And then about 2016, 2017, a friend of mine showed me an online system with eBay, selling products on eBay and then fulfilling with Amazon. And for about 2 years, we were crushing it. We had software doing all this stuff, and we were crushing it. And eventually, Amazon and eBay, they shut all this down because they saw it being automated, which it was. We're selling a couple hundred products a day, and 10, 12, 13 a month, 1,000 a month. It was good money. Wasn't hard work. We were working from home. And then I decided, okay, what are we going to do now? And I knew some people in the title business that says, now you should get your notary and become a notary signing agent. So for several years, I was doing notary loan signings and notary stuff in general with some attorneys, doing wills, notarizing wills and last testaments and stuff, just going out, mobile notary stuff. And then I was listening to a freaking podcast and you were talking.
Was it my podcast or was it somebody else's?
It was somebody else's, but you were a speaker. Could have been Frank Kern. I don't know.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I'm thinking to myself, freaking Carlos, I haven't talked to him in a good 10 or 11 years. And then you were talking about taxes. And then the first thing I thought was, oh my God, he's a CPA. He was pretty good at what that was. And so that's when I was out doing some notary stuff. I said, man, I got to call Carlos. And that's when I talked to you. And it was that one freaking day. I never forget it. It was a Saturday in January in Florida. It was cloudy, about 45, 50 and rainy out. It was just a really miserable, cold day. And I'm driving around doing the notary stuff. And I'm going, this is not fun anymore. And then I started talking to you. And then you were telling me what you're doing. And I says, let me see. He's helping people that are in trouble. He's getting paid to do it. And he basically works from home. I said, what about this don't I like? But the only part he forgot to tell me was how hard it is to get the licensing and the education.
You know what's funny, Pete, is I remember that day because it was actually a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah.
Crisp day. I was out front I live in the mountains and I'm having this conversation with you. And even I remember Liz asking, who the hell are you talking to out there? And I was just excited because I think you got excited and it had been a while. You went through that process of becoming an enrolled agent. So when I had told you about it, but here was the funny part, Pete, when I told you, and when I was talking to Pete was because he had asked me, well, how do you do that, the type of work that you do? And I told him there's only 3 ways you can actually legally help or legally represent taxpayers that have tax problems. You have to be a CPA attorney or an enrolled agent. And obviously neither one of us are gone to college to become a CPA or an attorney. So if you become an enrolled agent, it's a very hard exam. It's a 3-4 exams that you got to take. And if you can pass that, you can get the federal license to represent a taxpayer legally. And Pete, I have had that conversation with at least 12 people, that exact conversation of the process. And they all got pumped up and excited. I'm going to go do this. And no one's ever done it. So I was telling you that. And I literally thought he ain't going to do it because you know what? As you already experienced, it's damn hard to do it. And then all of a sudden you ended up taking you took tax models course, right?
Yeah, you told me. I just basically followed your directions. I don't need to learn shit. I just listened to you. So you already did it. And what I did was I went to tax models course. And it was one of those things where I said to myself, this is going to be a piece of cake. I'm going to knock this thing out. 6 months, we're done. It's a 6-month class. It's perfect. I'm going to do a little studying, going to get through this and get a license. So one of the first people I told this to was my son-in-law, which is an attorney. And his friend works for the IRS as an attorney in San Diego. And I asked you, would it be of any value to know the guy? And you told me not necessarily because he works for the IRS and we represent taxpayers. So I told my son-in-law what I was going to do, and he asked me, he looked at me and says, why are you doing that? I said, because I think it's a great profession. I think there's just nothing else like it. And there's only two things in life for sure: death and taxes. And I don't plan on dying, so we'll help people with their tax problems. And he said, Pete, you don't even know what you're getting. You have no clue. Here, you want to talk to the guy's name is Mike, his friend. You want to talk to Mike? He works for the IRS, and he'll tell you a little bit about what it takes. I said, no, I don't need to hear all that. I got the best trainers already. I'm going to go ahead and knock this thing out. And I told this to some other people that understood taxation, and they knew what it could be a enrolled agent. I had another attorney that I did some notary work for, and she asked me the same question. Why are you doing this? I said, because it seems like a damn good idea. And the profession has some substance. You're really working to help people. And these are people that are ignorant to the idea of how taxes work. And they're just basically sheep waiting to get slaughtered. So somebody's got to step up. And we get paid to do this, which is a good thing, too. I started the course, and this is no kidding. Everybody was like looking at me as I was doing this studying and everything. And they go, he ain't going to make it. This is too much work. I went through the first month and I just said, I don't know, man. I don't understand any of this. I'm like freaking totally, I'm in the middle of a storm in the ocean and I don't know where the sky or the water or I'm like going, I don't know how people actually, who the hell writes this, let alone knows this, which is from a guy that came from, I've seen K-1s, I've seen tax returns because the mortgage business, right? But you really don't need to know anything. You just need to go to line 19 or whatever. You want to see net. What's the money? Forget all the deductions. Forget all the gross. None of that matters. Here's the net. What did they earn that year? Right? So I got that. And then that's what I thought this was going to be. And then once I got going, man, I told you, remember our conversation? I said, I got to study like 4 hours a day or there's no way I'm going to pass this. And you go, don't worry, man. You don't need that. I said, oh, I bet I do. So I kind of went through it. Everything was great. I felt confident, doing well on the quizzes. I went and took my first test. Dude, I tell you, the first 20 questions, I said, I didn't even know the language these people are speaking. I've never seen this stuff. And I failed my first test, individual taxes. I said, oh, my God. I was so bummed out. I said, as hard as I studied. And so if I showed you the back of my desk here, I got like these piles of flashcards. I did like 300 of them. And I got to do so many questions. I had to write them on both sides. Question on this side, question and answer on this side. So I said, you know what? I just got to study harder. So when I did go through the Marine Corps and I did go through boot camp. And I remember telling the drill instructor one time, he said to me, you're not going to make it, private. You're not going to make it. I said, well, so there's only two ways I'm leaving. I'm either leaving in a body bag or I'm going to graduate. He goes, call your parents and let them know we'll be shipping your body home. So I said, well, you know that I'm going to be dead. It won't matter. So this thing, after that first test, I said to myself, you know what? There is no way, no freaking way I'm not going to pass these three tests. And I knew from everybody talking about in the group, test number 2 was the hardest because that's business taxes. And you need to know sole proprietor, partnerships, corporations, S Corp, C Corp, understanding how to turn into an entity, what you need, the paperwork you need to file, when you need to file, all that good stuff, the filing dates for your taxes, extensions, on and on. So I said, let me get through number 1 and I'm going to be okay with number 2. And I was totally wrong. I got through number 1 after passing the second time. So nobody understands this, but it costs you $208 to take the damn quiz or test.
Well, it's gone up. It's gone up in price.
You got to pay again. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's like getting paid. Okay, punch me in the face. That's $208. Punch me in the face again, please. 208 more. So it's like, oh my God. So anyway, I had a lot of people say good luck, which means you're never going to do this, right? I said, none of this is luck, my man. This is all about hard work. So once I got to like the end of the road and I passed my final test, everybody was, you did what? You actually passed this stuff? And the people that understood it couldn't believe it. I'm like, I'm almost got to tell them I'm not lying, right? Because they thought, the people that know what it takes to get through this, they'll tell you that aside from being a lawyer or CPA, this is a pretty hard task to accomplish, especially for somebody that's 60 plus years old, had been in school for 40 years and never liked school when he went. So it was like one of those things. Now I look at it and I go, the hardest part of this thing is telling people what an enroll agent does because nobody really knows.
Nobody knows.
And it doesn't really matter. Having done it and knowing what it is, now it's just a matter of helping those that need help. But yeah, man, I'm totally psyched. This is my last gig. I'm not doing anything else from here unless the world comes to an end and there's no taxes anymore. I'll be doing this tax debt resolution until I'm no longer working.
That's awesome. I just love hearing that. And hell, you told me some stuff I didn't even know there. What I loved about your story is also very similar to mine from this sense,
Well,
right? Is that
dude, we resonate. This is the whole thing. I look at you and I go, shit, I'm doing what he did.
and it's funny because one of the things when Peter told me I took his test and I was going through, okay, these are some of the things that need to get done to get your license. He's like, oh shoot. And I know I'm going to share something in private about Pete, but he also wrote it in his book that he wrote. I'm going to share this. Actually, I'll share that right now. Pete also, let me share this book screen here.
Yeah, I went several years without paying taxes because I figured, well, I ain't making that much money. Why do we need to worry about it?
There you go. Pete actually wrote his book that you're going to be able to download. He's doing the final editing here, but literally the ultimate survivor guide for IRS troubles and tax issues. So Pete actually wrote this book, and the thing that's interesting, as he just said, when I was going, okay, now you got to apply for your license. He's like, wait a second, I got a few years of tax returns I haven't filed. So I said, Pete, we got to get that resolved. And I know we went through that. I think that's all resolved now. You even told me you were on the phone with the IRS.
Yep.
You're actually trained to do it. And talk to me a little bit about that.
You know, when we started this conversation a few years ago about doing this EA thing, I knew that there would be issues eventually we get to, but there's no point in working on those now. We haven't got our EA yet. So we haven't got the license. We got to go through the classes. But I told you coming into this thing that I do owe money from prior years where I wasn't taking any withholdings. I was making money, doing my taxes. I owed him money. And like for whatever I owed him, I'd send him a couple bucks. And the rest of it was obviously penalties and interest, keep accumulating. I did have a payment plan years ago, but let that go. And I said, well, big deal. And it was a big deal. And then I started getting ugly letters. And then you and I had that conversation way back a few years ago. And then we got things sorted out. You did your thing, the way you do things with working with the IRS. And basically, man, the storm is gone. They were sending real nasty letters. They were, if you don't know how to spell levy, it's Levy. And it's where they want to come after, attach everything you own that's liquid or transferable to their wallet. And it's one of those things that if you don't believe they'll do that, then go ahead and you believe in Santa Claus, because they will do that. And they are serious. And when they get serious to the point that they do it, you're already too far down the hole to get out. And you got to go to somebody like Carlos or myself to get help. And the reality of it is most people, I say this over and over again, most people don't understand how big the IRS is. When you got the Department of the Treasury, can go globally, and then you got the IRS that's here. And if you don't get what they're all about, their whole point in existence is to make sure people are paying their share of taxes and to make sure that everybody's in compliance. And those that aren't, their job is to get them in compliance and get their money. And my strategy is always the same. The IRS has a motto: it's our money and we want it. And that's okay. There's another story I heard too, and it goes like this: there's nothing wrong with paying your fair share of taxes, but there's no reason to leave a tip. So if you don't know what your fair share is and you're not aware of the rules, IRS, like you said earlier to a customer you were talking about, IRS doesn't always do things right. Sometimes they make mistakes. And if you don't know what they're doing, you're definitely not going to know if they're making mistakes. And we have rights. We have what they call the Bill of Rights. And the unfortunate reality is they don't teach you this at school. There's no, unless you go through Tax Mama's course, when are you going to ever study taxation, Circular 230, Title 26, any of that stuff? There's no reason to, because you hire somebody to do your taxes. And we don't even know if the people we hire know. It's just they do your taxes.
Yeah, and what Pete was mentioning, I was doing a little training with him, and one of the most important things when you're dealing with that IRS tax problem is just doing an investigation and finding out what the government is claiming. And as Pete mentioned, is that a lot of times the government will just make up amounts. I know, being in the state of California, if you don't file a tax return, they'll just make up an amount and start collecting on that amount, and the IRS will do the same thing. And a lot of times, and you'll see this a lot of times, is that people will just start paying. They'll just start paying, or their banks will be garnished, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm not going to worry about it. They took the money," or they're doing wage garnishments. And I have to remind people, the wage garnishments are based on made up amounts. Don't you want to pay what you legally owe, not what they claim that you owe with a tip on top of it, as Pete mentioned there. So that's why it's so important. But your story just, I love that story just because it's literally we're cut from the same cloth, and unfiled returns, tax problems, decide to become an enrolled agent to go help other taxpayers.
It just makes perfect sense because we've been in the hot seat, understanding what. Listen, I'm going to tell you. Prior to talking to you a few years ago, I had a guy that was trying to help me. He was a CPA, and I just didn't have confidence the guy knew what he was doing. And he had tried several things that didn't work. And I don't think he was very good at resolving issues with the IRS. I think he's probably a CPA that could do your books, maybe do tax. There's book taxes and there's IRS taxes. And he was probably good for your company to sort out all your expenses and your income. But I don't think he had IRS experience with taxation in a way where he was trying to help you. We never got anywhere. In other words, he tried to set me up with a payment plan. And it was 2 or 3 times we tried to get it going. It didn't work for whatever reason. And I had to just basically kick him to the curb and say, I don't think this is working. But yeah, no, listen, until you're actually involved in a way that's not fun, you don't realize how serious these guys could be. And by working in the world and dealing with people that got issues, that it's no joke. They're serious.
No.
They're coming for
You
what
mentioned the IRS installment agreement. A lot of times people will tell me, why do I need to hire you to do an installment agreement? Can I do it myself?
Sure.
And you know what, Pete, and you bring this up to clients too. You can do everything that we do yourself. You don't have to hire somebody, just like you can hire somebody you can do your own oil change, or you can hire somebody to do your oil change. And there's so many examples like that. And same thing with this. The problem is that you don't know the rules and the regulation that the IRS goes. And as a perfect example on this installment agreement, I had somebody that got really upset when he had found out that the IRS had basically imposed a $2,000 monthly installment agreement. And I actually challenged the IRS in appeals court to that $2,000 installment agreement. The appeals court even decided to send a revenue officer to go look at this guy's home to do an inspection to try to figure out that. And after the inspection, they came back and said, no, he owes $2,000 a month. And I challenged it, and I went through their paperwork and found so many mistakes that appeals came back and said, you know what? This guy can afford to pay nothing. So we're putting him in a non-collectible status, which basically means no installment agreement. So how do you go from an IRS collection saying $2,000 a month to a revenue officer saying $2,000 a month after doing an inspection of his home and his assets, to finding out through appeals that all their paperwork was incorrect, and I can say he pays nothing. So don't just assume that, oh, you can do an installment agreement or you can just call the IRS and they'll put you on one based on what they feel that you can pay. Problem is, based on what they feel that you can pay is not what you can probably actually pay.
It's like the wolves watching over the chickens.
Great example.
We'll watch them for you. Don't worry. They're safe. Nobody. Hey, listen, here's what I have heard, but this may or may not be true. And I wouldn't take it as gospel. These guys get bonus points for money collected. Now, it's like the more money you collect, the more bonus points you get, the more it reflects on your overall standing in the service, and it works toward your possible promotions. I don't think there's an actual commission tied to the collected money, but I got to believe that the end goal is always to get, meaning collect, because there has to be a result after every event. Somewhere there has to be income generated because they're an income producing entity. Correct. This is their whole job, is to collect money.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never personally heard that. I'd love to talk to some revenue officers that have worked there. I heard that they do get assessed based on cases closed and obviously promotions and all that, but I don't know. And that'd be a great question. If you happen to be a revenue officer that's worked for the IRS or an agent, hey, comment on this post and let us know.
They would probably tell you after they retired.
Yeah, definitely. So if you were a former, go ahead and comment on that. But what's great now for you guys that don't know, Pete is actually just waiting on his license to arrive in the mail. It should happen any day now. And Pete is actually going to be working with us here at Tax Debt Consultant. He's also going to be running his own practice out in Florida. And if you happen to be working with me, you may be talking to Pete at one time, because this man knows how to deal with people. As you can see, a very friendly individual. And our job here at Tax Debt Consultants is to help as many people as we can with tax problems that they're going through. And I'm just super jazzed on Pete. And Pete, I can't wait till your book officially shows up. And there's the book, just so you can see that's the book. Super excited for that book to be coming out. I know he's doing some final editing. That book will be out soon. And Pete's excited because, let me get him back here. He can now actually go to tax resolution training courses with me. And I believe I'm going to be out in Florida for Eric Green, a tax attorney friend and colleague, that's doing an event out there. So
get the power team, man. That's the power team. That's Carlos and Eric. I call them the freaking dynamic duo. Two smartest tax people I know on this side of the tax game.
You're gonna love Eric and the cigar smoking.
Listen, man. He's a 20+ year tax attorney, and you're 8 years now defending the public against IRS improprieties, not illegal, but impropriety. You know what I'm talking about? Stuff that you're at least you're drawing the line in the sand, saying this is what it is, and let's work on getting it right. And that's a beautiful thing. Listen, I'm just happy as shit I know you. So with that being said, Carlos, I can't thank you. I've said it so many times. Thank you for everything. It's eventually, man, we'll make some big deals in this world.
I don't know. I know Pete's going in and out here. We're gonna fix that audio issue while we're editing on this. But Pete, I believe you could still. Pete, you disappeared there for just a second.
All right.
Internet connectivity. But it's just, Pete, I'm just so happy that you're my first real student that actually graduated and became an EA. Congratulations. And I'm looking forward to working with you. And
buddy, we're going to kill it. We're going to make some people happy, and we're going to frustrate some of the guys on the other side of the freaking table with their unhappiness about the fact that we're taking over. That's all.
Gotcha.
It's
one last final tip.
To be okay.
I gotta, Pete, if there's a tax person, not a tax person, a person with tax problems, and they're watching this, you being somebody that's been through it and now helping people, what's your advice to them?
First and foremost is to if you've got any, my first advice would be get in compliance. If you're not filing for a year or 2 years, get all your tax information squared away as far as your filing is concerned. Start with that. Getting in compliance is important because, number one, you said this earlier, Carlos, in a conversation I was listening to where you were having with a client, that if we don't know what you owe, we can't very well fix it. So once you get in compliance and get all your returns filed and you're current, at that time, then we can actually go ahead and take a look and see what you're dealing with, assess a plan based on your situation, and actually move forward and getting a solution that's going to be favorable for everybody. Because the IRS isn't going to just do things for you because they want to. They're going to do things that are required by law, and then process. You're going to have to be able to set aside an example of why you're where you're at and how we could fix that. So to answer your question, get in compliance first, and then learning about the ideas that are available based on your situation would be how we would move forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's some excellent advice. And also be aware, guys, if you had less than 6 years of non-filing returns done, and you want to talk to somebody like me or Pete before you get those done. But if you've got more than 6 years of unfiled returns, don't do anything until you've had a conversation with a tax professional that understands IRS collections, because there's a lot of damage you can do to yourself if you've gone more than 6 years and you just start filing tax returns. So you want to contact somebody like myself or Pete before you do that. With that, Pete, I'm going to wrap this up. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story, and looking forward to working with you and helping you grow your business and working with me and my company. So
you're the Joe Rogan of the tax world.
I just got to get paid like Joe Rogan in the tax world.
Buddy, listen, you don't know, man. You're very close.
XM Radio, I'm available if you need me.
Hey, you could be on Spotify before you know.
Oh, is that what it is? Spotify?
Okay. Spotify, that's where the money was.
Oh, gotcha. All right, guys. And if you haven't picked up our book, taxdebtbook.com, feel free to grab our book, taxdebtbook.com. And if you need to call our offices to discuss your situation, you can always reach us 24 hours a day at that 909-570-1103. With that, I'll talk to you guys
Thank you,
later.
Carlos.